Ready to go? Okay. So, welcome to the Candidates Forum that's sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Marin County. I'm Lori Nardone, and with me is Vita Flores, who is our timekeeper for this evening. We'll be collecting questions from the audience and appreciate your printing legibly, briefly, and addressing issues that are applicable to all of the candidates. There are 8 candidates running for 1 seat, which has a 4-year term. They are in alphabetical order: Al Dugan, Alex Easton Brown, Dominic Grossi, Wendy Callens, Thomas Castiglionis, Dennis Rodoni, Brian Staley, and Mari Tarumbo. Is it Mary?
It's Mary Tamburo.
I had to do one. Mary Tamburo.
Close enough.
The candidates have been invited to make opening statements of 1 minute, which will begin in alphabetical order. So we will start with Al Dugan first, and then Alex Easton Brown. So let's start with that.
Okay. I'm Al Dugan, and pleasure to be here with you. I'm running because I think we have some critical issues here in Marin County that have to be addressed. And my background as a successful executive with 24 years experience, as well as serving as an underwriter for Lloyd's of London, handling such accounts as Google, Microsoft, Apple, and HP, lend me the background to be able to take care of these issues. The 2 issues are we have to make sure we get our regional housing correct in the next cycle in 2017, because that impacts all aspects of our lives. And we also have to make sure that we have a working pension system moving forward, so the money will be there to pay the people that need the pensions. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Too much traffic, yet the county spends hundreds of thousands of dollars trying to attract tourists to Marin. Last month, the cover of Sunset magazine featured Muir Woods, which gets over 1 million tourists a year. This month's 3A magazine features a relatively unknown Tennessee Valley, a treasure to behold, it says, but not for long. Every tourist destination eventually gets ruined. Yet the Visitors Bureau lies about the benefits Marin receives from these hordes of tourists. The money mostly goes to tour bus operators, while we're left with their pollution, their traffic, and their trash. If that's not enough, while the politicians running the city of Bell in LA County sit in jail for racketeering, our county officials have been getting away with the same kind of shell game by illegally enhancing their pensions between 2002 and 2008, taking us from a surplus to an unfunded pension liability in excess of $500 million.
Thank you. Dominic?
Hi, my name is Dominic Grossi. I'm a 4th-generation dairyman from Novato. My family has been here for about 120 years, and we're deeply rooted in this community. And continuing to protect and preserve West Marin is extremely important to me. And that's one of the main reasons I'm running. I've served as a leader in many agricultural committees over the past 15 years. I've been appointed to the Sonoma Marin Fair Board by the Governor of California, as well as 2 additional dairy task force and the California Beef Council by our Secretary of Agriculture here in California. And I've been working for the past 8 years diligently on our local coastal plan while with the Farm Bureau to help protect agriculture and to continue to protect the open spaces that I think are important to all of us. And so those leadership skills, I think, will help benefit me in my job as supervisor. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy?
Hi, my name is Wendy Callens, and I live in Forest Knolls, and I'm the founder and program director for Safe Routes to Schools. I have a wide breadth of experience, years of community service. Over the last 30 years, I've been involved in issues as diverse as transportation, land use, housing, open space, health and safety, environmental protection, climate change. I've worked on transportation ballot measures. I helped bring the stagecoach to West Marin, senior housing and protected open space in the San Geronimo Valley. The Safe Routes to Schools program has succeeded in bringing in over $30 million in safety improvements, and now 50% of Marin school children take a greenway to school. In fact, while every candidate here tonight will talk about reducing traffic, I'm the only one with experience actually doing it. I've always said government works best when it acts in partner with its citizens. I want to be your partner as your county supervisor. I'm here tonight to earn your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom?
Thomas. My name is Thomas Castellanos. I'm a first-generation American-Lithuanian, but third-generation U.S. serviceman. This summer I'll celebrate 10 years with my wife, Kim, who's the former CEO of Circle Bank, and I have 3 stepchildren, a civil engineer, a second lieutenant in the Air Force, and a student in speech pathology. I started my first business when I was 12. I ran my first $1 million restaurant when I was 19. By the time I was 26, I was managing a $150 million contract with 1,500 employees. Now I'm 40. I've spent 8 years with FEMA and 15 with the Coast Guard Reserves. Where people up here will talk about leadership, I'm actually held to that leadership for protecting people and helping them at their worst times. I will lead the county away from regional boards to better support students, commuters, and the voters. I will champion the implementation of new ideas to make the county more accessible and actionable, and I will develop and execute plans to help and support the citizens of Marin, to include children, the elderly, and all the households in Marin.
Thank you. Dennis?
I'm Dennis Rodoni. Excuse me. I reside in Olema with my wife of 37 years, Judy. I'm a West Marin native, was raised in Point Reyes Station, attended local schools, and graduated from California State University at Chico with honors in economics. For over the last 34 years, I owned and managed Rodoni Construction Company. Prior to that, I was a high school teacher in Australia in Sonoma. The Sierra Club has endorsed me, as well as West Marin Ranchers, but mostly it's my experience in government that makes me qualified for replacing Steve Kinsey. For over 20 years, I've been on the board of North Marin Water District, working on water issues in West Marin and Novato. I've also served on several committees with the Sonoma County Water Agency, dealing with water issues in the North Bay and Marin County. I helped develop water policies for 600,000 people during 4 years of drought, and I've been on LAFCO, Local Agency Formation Commission, for 14 years. It's all these jobs that I've had in government that I believe make me the most qualified for starting day one at the Board of Supervisors. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
My name is Brian Staley. I'm a third-generation Californian who was raised in Marin. My wife and I have owned our home in Woodacre for 25 years. I've been a planner, designer, and builder in Marin for 30 years. My area of expertise in the field of construction are envelope efficiency and sustainable design. As part of my career experience, I've become extremely familiar with all state and county codes as they pertain to building, planning, habitat, land management, waste and its treatment, and zoning. My job has required me to be on top of the latest policies, codes, and regulations in the Planning Department, Department of Public Works, and the Department of Environmental Health, which gives me a leg up on how the system works. This insight has also allowed me the opportunity to see where changes can occur and where I can improve county efficiency. My qualifications include my role and commitment to defending and protecting the rural character and natural resources of our communities, which is a responsibility I take very seriously.
Thank you. Mary?
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to address the public with all these really great leaders in our community. My name is Mary Tamburo, and for most of my life, I've been a singer, but I've had many gigs between gigs. I'm very concerned with the growing economic disparity in Marin, and I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to represent an underrepresented portion of our population. I spent my childhood in Section 8 HUD housing in New Jersey, and I moved to California in the late 80s to get a better education. And so I struggled through many different part-time jobs until I got an AA in communications at Foothill College and was nominated for a leadership scholarship to UC Santa Cruz. And I left that to pursue a music career and to get married. So I'm glad that I'm here, and I wish you would consider a vote for me, and let's get on with the rest of the questions, I guess. Thanks.
Okay, great. And can I just remind people to silence your cell phones if you haven't done that already, just in case. So now for the questions. We're going to try to give everyone the opportunity to be the first person to answer the question as well as the last. Candidates will have 1 minute for their answers. We're going to start in alphabetical order, beginning with Alex Easton Brown now, and then we'll continue to rotate. So, for the first question, Marin's growing, this will be right up your alley, traffic congestion is created both by county residents and people commuting into the county. What are your suggestions for solving the traffic problems?
Well, I think tourists are a big problem. I can't get anywhere on the weekends, it seems like. I would shut down Vista Point on the Golden Gate Bridge to all but foot traffic. I would reduce the number of visitors to Muir Woods. I would open the third lane on the Richmond Bridge. I would start metering and charging for commuter traffic in the afternoons on 580 out by Drake's Landing for the people that use Marin as a shortcut between the city and East Bay. They avoid the tolls on both bridges, and if we started charging them $5 each during peak times, perhaps they'd start going back to the Bay Bridge instead.
Okay, Dominic?
Thank you. So I do agree we need to get the third lane on 580 open and moving forward, but probably even more importantly is we need to get a direct connection between 101 over to 580 to make it easier to alleviate all that traffic, people currently that are sitting on Sir Francis Drake Boulevard and stuck there. So this would help to move that traffic much quicker over to 580 and alleviate congestion in downtown Corte Madera that works its way up to and through the entire Green Bay alleyway to get out to through Sir Francis Drake Boulevard. The other thing we need to do is to work with Sonoma County. We talk about, as mentioned in the question, a lot of our traffic comes from Sonoma County. We need to build that relationship, work with them to get parking lots up there, to start incentivizing people to carpool. Because when I drive down these roads, it seems like almost no one is carpooling anymore. And we need to do a better job of incentivizing that, whether we're making an additional charge on people that aren't doing that. But we have to work with Sonoma County because much of our traffic comes from them. A lot of people talk about the extra people, but the majority of growth has come from Sonoma County and not Marin.
Thank you. Wendy?
Well, as I said before, I'm the only person up here who has actually done something about reducing traffic. When you're working to address traffic congestion, you have to start by really understanding the problem. So we need to analyze what is causing the traffic. And each person is talking about one piece of it, but this is a systemic problem. We have to look at it systemically. We can make traffic running smoother by putting in modern traffic control technology, but we can only reduce traffic by providing viable alternative. I have worked already with Sonoma County. I was working on bringing the train here starting in 1990, actually. I was an early innovator. I served on the committee that is working to bring back the yellow school buses. I was also on the committee that created the West Marin stagecoach. So I'm the only one here who has actually reduced traffic congestion around schools. A lot of people will talk about, we need to get kids to, walk and bike to school. Oh, you gave me the wrong one. Okay.
Oh. Okay. Sorry to cut you short. Thank you, though. Okay, Tomas.
Well, I think it's somewhat interesting. I'm the only commuter up here, and I have for the last 13 years through the Bay Area. And I hear people pontificate about solutions for traffic, which they know nothing about. Nothing in the fact that they're not commuters. Many of them travel from West Marin, and so they should be talking about that corridor. But when we're talking about the 101 corridor, the third lane of the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge does little to bring down, or will do little to bring down reduction of traffic in 101. And as Wendy had borrowed my idea, we do need to turn on the metering lights on 101. They were installed but never turned on. That's simply the $40 million that got given to SMART from TAM this year probably could have been used for that, and Caltrans could have turned those on. People don't carpool because Dominic doesn't carpool, but my vehicle got broken into last week at the carpool area. It's unsafe to keep our vehicles there now, and I've been a commuter for the last 8 years at that Vanpool site, and that same day, a vehicle was stolen and stripped and finally found the following day in Petaluma. So we have to make it safe for commuters to have these programs.
Thank you. Dennis?
Certainly opening the third lane of the Richmond Bridge will help, but part of the problem is the 580 interchange, and if elected, I want to work with the city of San Rafael and come up with a solution that works for them too, because that's part of the puzzle. Our transit needs to be improved. We have a wonderful train that's going to be running down the tracks very soon, but we do not have any good interconnection. That part of the plan never got built. We need to make sure that Marin Transit is funded so that we can make interconnection to the train so that people will use it and people will ride it. schools in the yellow school bus certainly is a nice idea. A lot of the traffic's being generated in the morning and in the afternoons by people driving their children to school. The other thing is, if you look at my housing plan, part of my housing plan is to have a workforce housing plan and promote a program where employees and public safety officials move back into Marin. And we're going to do that by investing in the people and investing some of the county's great investment fund into our own employees using silent seconds for people. So look at my housing plan.
Thank you. Brian?
It's important to take note of the statistics that we do have available. First off, there are 68,000 people that drive into Marin every day. A majority of those are service sector jobs, and obviously that has everything to do with the fact that we live in an affluent community. We have a lot of landscape maintenance, we have a lot of housing maintenance, we have an enormous army of people that come and help us. The question is there a way, are buses going to fix that? And I would say no, it's likely that's not going to be fixed through busing. Is putting an additional lane or opening an additional lane on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge going to fix that problem? The answer is no. It'll help a little bit. So we really need to look at the fundamental systemic issues. We need to figure out appropriate ways to find workforce housing for the people who do work here full-time. And we need to really look at appropriate infill housing, specifically the kinds that are currently proposed up north by George Lucas.
Thank you. Mary?
I think traffic is directly connected to land use planning. And if we take a look at some of the mistakes we've made in the past and try to fix them, for instance, when we move schools around and then people have to go way across town to drive their kids to school because they can't walk to school, that's an issue. Also, when we need to do something to keep the local mom and pop businesses in our downtown areas, for example, because I live in Homestead Valley, we're very close to downtown Mill Valley, and we now have a hardware store. We used to have hardware stores and pharmacies in town, but now we have to get on the freeway just to get something from the hardware store, and I think that's lacking in foresight and planning. So what I would do as supervisor is take a look at where the traffic messes are, times and days, and then we propose solutions according to what it is we have to deal with.
Thank you. Okay, Al?
We have to focus on realistic solutions to traffic congestion, and an example of that would be, it's been mentioned here, would be school buses in the morning. If you've ever driven on 101 when school is out, you notice substantial difference in the traffic on 101. So we need to do a cost-benefit analysis of the use of school buses and putting that program together. We, of course, have to open the third lane on the Richmond-San Rafael Bridge, but we have to be careful with that and monitor that we don't get overrun by East Bay traffic. And maybe we will have to use a reverse commute toll to be able to control that. And then finally, we have to be careful. When we add more housing, commuting is only 1/4 of the use of the automobile. 3/4 of the use of the automobile is for non-commute issues like doctors and going to sports complexes and things like that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this time we will start with Dominic to be the first person to respond. Give a concrete example of how you have brought diverse interests together, built consensus, and accomplished a concrete goal.
That would come with my work within the LCP, the Local Coastal Plan. The agricultural and environmental segments of our community had been at odds for the past 20 years. And I brought consensus and collaborated with the environmental community to bring some ideas that I felt were very important to the local coastal plan to help protect the ranchers and continue to protect the environment. One of them was intergenerational housing, something that had never been allowed on our local coastal zone properties before. And so if we get this to go forward, we have to get it through the Coastal Commission, but that is something I'm very proud of, which would allow farmers to build a home for their children. Only up to 2 homes, though. And other things in the coastal zone, we were able to get the Coastal Commission, or at least our county staff, to understand that we need diversity and be able to switch crops, change in use. things change in agriculture very quickly. So you might have to put in a different crop in the following year. And when I started that working on the LCP, the environmental community didn't want that. They were afraid of too much water being used. So over time, we were able to convince them that we weren't going to damage the entire water system.
Thank you. Wendy?
Yes, when I started Safe Routes to Schools 16 years ago, we had parents who were furious that the streets were not safe for their children. We had staff at Public Works who didn't want to be bothered because they felt that their job was to move traffic and make sure that it went quickly. And we had school districts that didn't think transportation was their problem because their job was to educate kids. So I had to get people to sit down together. Not only did I listen to what they had to say, but I got them to listen to each other. One thing I'm very proud of is getting staff, the county staff and the city staff, to actually start listening and give respect to the citizens who had concerns, and getting the citizens to respect the expertise coming from the staff, and getting the elected officials to understand that this was their problem. So 16 years later, we have robust task forces. All these people are now sitting down together, and all I have to do now is sit back because everybody's on the same page, and I've done my work.
Thank you. Tomas?
With over 15 responses around the country, working either for the Coast Guard or for FEMA, in 2011, and I'm just going to use this example, I went up to northern Alabama and worked with the Black and Hispanic communities that had been impacted by Category 5 and 4 tornadoes. They had lost power. I was up in that valley for over a week and a half, powerless, while they were trying to get the nuclear generation plant back online. That community, losing their homes, completely wiped off their foundations, all of their worldly belongings, required me to work with them and their community leaders to get them the things they needed, whether that was day-to-day food, cash stipends, clothing for their families, a safe place to come home to and their kids to play. I even worked with the community leader there that ran the youth center, and we actually used that as a base of operations to do one-on-one registration with each of the members there because they would not commute to the major metropolitan city nearby where they had most of those registration stations. So I stayed with that community until they were served and my duty was done.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. So for the last 2 years, I ended my term in February. I was chairman of the Sonoma County Water Agency Water Advisory Committee, which was all the elected officials of contractors that belong to that agency. And for the last 4 years, if you're all aware, we've been dealing with a drought that California has not seen before. And according to the governor today, we're going to continue restrictions, it looks like. So it's not easy to bring 9 or 10 contractors together to come to a conclusion about what approaches they want to take about water conservation. I was very pleased that that group formed the Sonoma Marin Water Saving Partnership, which brought forth all the conservation measures uniformly together. For each agency had the same conservation methods and the same rebates and things like that. It was a challenge because everyone had their own interests, from Sonoma to Windsor to Santa Rosa to Petaluma and Marin Municipal and North Marin. But at the end of the day, that whole group came together and saw the bigger picture, and I helped bring that about. So I'm pleased. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Yes, over the last 3 decades, I've been an activist attempting to, and in some cases successfully, slowing inappropriate development in West Marin. The most recent instance where we were highly successful collectively was there was a Marin Municipal Water District proposed an absolutely enormous water tank in our community up on top of the ridge, and it would have absolutely changed the character of our neighborhood. Essentially what we did is we looked at the numbers very successfully and were able to convince the MMWD board that the water tank was actually not necessary, and we were successful. It would have been the ultimate boondoggle. That is just one example of many that I've been involved in over the last 3 decades.
Thank you. Mary?
Okay, a lot of, because I don't really have too much experience in the political realm, I do have quite a diverse amount of experience in the private sector. And one instance is in 2000, I was working for a .com in the customer service department and the general customer service department, and then we had an e-commerce customer service department that only had 2 working staff in that department, although that was the only area of the company generating revenue. and it was like the mystery spot. So I, I was intrigued by their challenges, and I convinced the head of the department to let me into that department, where I reconfigured the Kana customer response software program so that the entire customer service department of 20-plus people could use it. And as a result, we increased efficiency and reduced lag time in customer service response.
Thank you. Al?
My work as an underwriter for Lloyd's of London was totally about building consensus and putting together competing issues to come up with a solution. I had to work with the brokers, I had to work with the large companies, we had to work with their vendors to come up with solutions that would work for everybody, and it was very often a compromise between everyone because these solutions had to work for everybody in the end. It had to be a win-win. So I've done that my entire career, and I can certainly carry that forward in any other line of work. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Dick Spotswood called me only a Marin combination of a progressive and a tax watchdog. As a tax watchdog, fiscal responsibility has always been my main concern. Because of that, I became treasurer and president of MUTA, Marin United Taxpayers. And as a progressive, having to deal with ultra-conservative, difficult people was quite an art form. And I found that if I just avoided the culture wars and stayed on the money, that we were able to proceed successfully.
Thank you. Okay, this time we will start with Wendy. Please provide your thoughts regarding solutions for the payment of unfunded pension and retiree health liability in Marin.
Well, I think that the county has come a long way. We used to have a surplus in our pensions. Then we went through 2 major recessions, and that resulted in now we have a deficit. The county has paid down about half of that deficit, and there's a new system now in place. So I think we are on our way to solving the problem. But I want to add that, everyone talks about the fiscal responsibility is the responsibility of an elected official, and I want to add what our responsibility is to provide good service to our constituents. And I think that is every bit as important as being fiscally responsible as how we spend our money. I just told you about how I got staff to actually start responding to the citizenry. And there's also a mound of paperwork that I would like to deal with when I get in there. We have to treat our staff right if we want to get good service. Thank you.
Thank you. Tomas?
I spent the last 4 years as an elected official on the Fire District Board of Directors. You may have seen that I filed 3 complaints against several of those directors for the negotiations with some of the contracts. When you look at the pension liability, factors that build up that pension are important to understand. If you go to my website, I actually articulate both my solutions for how to deal with public pension, but also the growing OPEB or other post-employment benefit liability, in addition to fully disclosing those complaints so you can read for them yourself. That's Thomas4Marin.com. But what I would say is that we also need to look at not just the pension liability, but that OPEB. And we do have to look at new ways of being able to not burden our current employees or future employees with a poor market or decisions that we may have made in past contracts. So there's opportunities to actually invest. As Dennis borrowed my statistics before, we have an investment pool of over $600 million that makes 0.1%. I wonder what we could do to empower that. In addition, we have $140 million in reserves. What else could we do?
Thank you. Dennis?
So I'm on North Marin Water Board, not Marin Municipal. I wasn't trying to build the tank Brian was talking about. So. But pensions are certainly a major issue in this campaign. We have huge obligations to the employees from previous contracts that we have to honor. However, there's been dramatic shift in the retirement benefits and the health care benefits that new employees have, new hires have taken on, and the unions have accepted that. And so the future will be much rosier, but we still have to figure out a way to pay the debt that we owe the previous employees in the previous contracts. Part of that is making good choices of buying down that debt when it's appropriate. North Marin Water District bought down $2 million of debt recently with surplus funds. We saved the customer $850,000 over the next 10 years. That's a good investment for the people, and that's the kind of thing I'd like to do at the county. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
It's important to note that the function of pensions not only allows individuals to pay into it themselves, so it's not entirely the responsibility of the taxpayers to cover that cost. It's also important to note that it is a tool that's used to attract qualified people in key positions at the county. There are a number of other tools. Obviously, salary, the level of salary is one of those tools. But the question is, whether or not, and this is something that's raised often, whether or not it makes sense to continue the process of offering pensions. And I think it is. I think pensions are a very viable way to make sure that people have an appropriate retirement of a decent value. So it's incumbent upon the supervisors to make sure that these plans remain completely solvent and aggressively continue to pay down the debts that have been referred to.
Thank you. Mary?
Thanks. Most of my background is in the arts sector, and I've had many years of experience on different nonprofit boards as well. I was on the founding board that founded the San Francisco chapter of the Social Enterprise Alliance, which is social enterprise brings about earned income models to help nonprofits become sustaining. And the reason I bring that up is I believe that a government is closer to a nonprofit organization than a business, but it needs to remain sustainable. So what I would propose is that we pay more attention to our underutilized arts and culture department and make an investment in that sector of our government as an earned income model. So I would look forward to those programs and developing those on the county level.
Thank you. Al?
My experience and background in both finance and analytics will be extremely helpful to deal with this issue. I am the only candidate up here that has been endorsed by Citizens for Sustainable Pension Plans. And I will work carefully. We have to make sure that we honor the contracts that we have in place and we can pay the people that we owe the contracts to. But moving forward, we've got to look at all aspects of this. And one of the aspects is the 7.25% return on investment. Can we carry that forward forever? And what will happen in the next recession? So we have to look at it. We have to make sure that we have a sustainable pension plan so that the money's there for the people that have the pensions down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
There's over 600 people drawing pensions in excess of $100,000, some as high as $300,000. I think of pensions as a safety net, like Social Security, not as a windfall. I think we should limit the pensionable pay in the county of Marin to $80,000. Now, most teachers only make about $35,000 a year with their pensions, so $80,000 is pretty comfortable, I feel. Also, I think we should try to renegotiate some of these pensions of the rich and famous, some of these $100,000 plus pensions that have gotten totally out of control. There's something called the California rule. I think we should challenge it in the courts and go after some of these larger pensions, like Marin is drawing almost $500,000.
Thank you. Dominic?
Thank you. Yeah, we absolutely need pensions to be sustainable. And I think a lot of what the state did and the county has done with regards to PEPRA in January of 2013 will go a long ways towards starting to make that happen. But that's 30 years down the road, 27 years down the road. And so we need to be applying funds whenever we have them available. So when there is surpluses, we should be putting that towards the pensions to make sure we start paying down the debt. And I think the county did the right thing. When you look at the healthcare side of it, they started to create their own, they put $50 million into it already to make sure that the healthcare will be sustainable. But healthcare, to me, the question was really to ask, where are we going to get the money? How are we going to do this? And I think the healthcare is really a place that we can start, and we can start to make small changes to those at the top of the pension plan. If they are collecting, I don't think we should cap them at $80,000, but If they're collecting 120, 140,000, maybe we could start pulling back a little bit on the amount that we pay in healthcare and make very small changes and work backwards, at least to start moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, this time we will start with Tomas. Do you support people renting out rooms in their homes with no restrictions? This will allow the locals and the elderly to remain in their homes.
Yeah, I've actually written an article called The Housing Octopus, The Many Tentacles of Marin. You can find it on my website. But I talk about short and long-term rentals. So, one strategy is, do you rent out your room? Yeah, you should rent out your room, and you should be able to have some safety in place as well, because as landlords, and my parents were landlords for some time, renting out a portion of their home, you do have issues. And so people who want to rent out a room need protection as well. So before we go and just carte blanche allow that to occur, we want to make sure that people are going to be protected if they do have issues. In addition, there are other strategies that can be utilized, ordinances that can be passed to help protect both the renters as well as the landlords. In addition, we talk about, many people are talking about infill and being able to build on their property. And we need to be able to make the county more efficient in being able to allow permits. Right now I have contractor friends that are telling me that it takes 2 months to get a very simple project through the county. And if we can't resolve that, we're not going to be able to do these small infill projects as well.
Thank you. Dennis?
You're referring to junior second units, and they're a wonderful tool for helping attack the affordable housing issues in communities, but they're also a wonderful tool for seniors to be able to have an income to be able to stay in their home. There's a lot of other ways that we need to help seniors stay in their home, but that's a wonderful tool. Gives a private entrance, a private bathroom, and a private little kitchen, in the case of Novato at least, where you can have a renter. Where we disconnect a little bit is most seniors don't feel very comfortable with that situation, and in particular finding renters. So we need to have some interagency discussion about someone who could help with that aspect. Perhaps the senior services or someone like that could connect viable, well-respected renters with seniors who have rooms available, and that would be a nice connection. So, thank you.
Thank you. Brian?
Luckily, there are not a lot of regulations that are imposed on people who want to be able to rent out a room or make little, as Dennis had mentioned, junior second units. The problem is, and where we see the housing actually impacted by it, are the new business models Airbnb and VRBO. In these instances, we're talking about vacation rentals, and so for the most part, they are for people that are out of the area, and they are certainly a good business model for the individuals. The problem is that the business model tends to reduce the overall amount of housing that's available to people who actually do live and work here. So we need to look at that, and we need to look at the transient occupancy tax, which right now is fairly low at 10%, and we need to think about how we incentivize housing for people who are actually working and living here.
Thank you. Mary?
I do support the ability of a homeowner to rent out a room. That's pretty much it. I don't see a need to pontificate on that. Everything that I would say has already been said. But yes, I think homeowners should have the ability to do what they want with their property as long as it's within, legal limits, and we're not shooting fireworks in the backyard on a dry day.
Al?
I support the ability of someone to rent a room in their house. The mention of the Airbnb, I think, is a serious issue moving forward. It's like many of these technology issues that come up and arise, we're going to have to be careful it doesn't overrun places, especially like West Marin, that's a destination area. So I think we're going to have to keep a close eye on Airbnbs, and we're going to have to make sure that we know the extent of growth and we can manage those things moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
I also think they have to be watched and regulated.
Okay. Dominic?
Yeah, as we talk about junior second units, I do believe we should have an element of regulation to them, if for no other reason, to make sure that it is safe and secure when people make changes to their homes, to put that extra door in, to allow someone there to live in their home that can either help an elderly person or even just to allow a homeowner to generate a little extra income. But it should be regulated as such so that we know it's taking place and that it's safe for both the renter and for the homeowner. The next thing we need to do on that, though, is we need to make sure we streamline the permitting process. Lily Pad Homes has been working on this for the last few years and has done a great job in Novato. They've got it down to a $500 permit, very simple, that you can then get in and make the changes. It still costs the money to make the changes, but they've made the permit process very easy. They're working on doing that here in San Rafael, and I think that that would be a great step in the right direction towards creating new housing, if you will, for people that do have jobs, that are working in Marin, whether they're taking care of the elderly in that home or working as a service provider somewhere else close by in Marin County.
Thank you. Wendy?
Well, I have been on the front lines of promoting affordable housing, and I often have to take the heat for it, and this is no exception. I'm part of Coalition for a Livable Marin. We're the only organization that has actually been working with Lily Pad Homes to streamline those regulations. We've been going around and talking to the various city councils and the water districts and streamlining that permit process. It is one solution, and we need more than that. Another solution that can keep people in their homes is to buy the land rights, very similar to what Malt does in buying the development rights on agriculture property. If we buy the land rights on homes where people are cash poor but house rich, they're able to stay in their home, and we've reduced the cost of that home and saved it in perpetuity for affordable housing. And I think that particular scheme might go even farther than the junior second units in really providing an opportunity to preserve affordability of what we already have.
Thank you. Okay, so Dennis, you'll be the first one to answer this one. Do you think the GGNRA should remain as a place to recreate, or do you think it should change and have restrictions on its use, such as dogs having to be on leashes or dogs not allowed in parts of the GGNRA?
Thank you for the question. The GGNRA include, and in the Point Reyes National Seashore, their primary mission is to protect a resource. And if you have anyone or any person or any group destroying the resource, it's the park's responsibility to protect it. So not singling out dogs, not singling out bicycles, not singling out horse people. Anyone that does disruptive things to the resource needs to understand that that's not the proper way to behave in any park, in particular the national park or the GGNRA. So when it comes to dogs and leases for dogs, I think it's perfectly appropriate that dogs have leases in some places. It's perfectly appropriate that they don't in others. And the park is best suited at determining where that is, because they're responsible for protecting the resource. So they know best where the resource needs less protection or more protection. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Brian?
Yes, absolutely. I think that the Golden Gate National Recreation Area, as well as Dennis had mentioned, the Point Reyes National Seashore, which, by the way, represents almost half of the land mass for the 4th District, which is the district we're running for. It's really important to note that these are, in particular, the Point Reyes National Seashore is designated by the federal government as a wilderness, which means that it has the highest level of protection of any federal parklands. Most of the Golden Gate, most of the GGNRA also has an equal level of protection. When it comes to animals and visitation, I think that's the fundamental reason that we maintain our parks, so I am absolutely in favor of that. What I do think is very important, though, is to consider the people that are using and leasing the land, and in this case, in the case of many parts of the GGNRA, are ranchers. And right now, the federal government's in the process of reissuing those leases. I'd like to see that happen fairly soon.
Great. Mary?
Okay, I'm very concerned about the changes in this particular dog management plan that's going on, the GGNRA, because the folks that live in Muir Woods Park and actually in Homestead Valley are going to be negatively impacted because Homestead Valley is still off-leash voice control. And so with nowhere else to go, we're going to have an influx of more people. Plus, the folks at Muir Beach are really asking, we aren't asking, the GGNRA is asking residents of Muir Beach to get in a car and go walk their dog somewhere. I think that's absolutely ridiculous, especially when it comes, what's the point of taking your dog to the beach if you can't let it run off leash? So I think we need to really tell the national park system to respect the original implication of the GGNRA to be able to recreate with our dogs and our people. Thank you.
Al?
The GGNRA, the prime considerations for any decision should be protecting the environment and making sure people are safe in that environment. And all those decisions should be made on a case-by-case basis and with those criteria as the primary concern. So I would hope that they would be looking at it with that in mind to make sure that we're protecting the environment and that everybody that's using those facilities is safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Yes, I don't have anything to add, except that I would really like to get the oyster farm back.
Alex and I agree completely on that one. And yes, I do think that we must allow people to continue to recreate, as the question asked. That's really what these parks are for. You know, we are purchased with tax dollars for everybody to use, and we must continue to protect the resources that are in them. And those resources, you know, involve everything, whether it was the oyster farm or the agriculture that's still going on. And I think it should continue to go on with regards to Point Reyes National Seashore and Golden Gate National Recreation Area. It's very important to me. It's part of the history and the heritage out there. And so allowing people to get out there and recreate, bring their dogs, you know, the people, just like anywhere else in town, they have to clean up after the dogs. Well, they're going to have to do that when they're going to go out there as well. But there's got to be areas, there's enough land out there to let people enjoy it. And that's really what the parks are for people to get out, recreate, and enjoy those parks.
Thank you. Wendy?
Well, I think what you're hearing up here is the dilemma of what we're facing. There are endangered species that are in the parks. They need to be protected. We do need to protect our natural resources, but it does seem a bit crazy that if you live in an area and there's an open space park nearby where you can walk your dog, that you can't walk your dog there. So, and you know, some of these restrictions are not just dogs off leash, but dogs on leash. I think we need to look at differentiating between, you know, so that people who actually live in an area can get a special permit to be able to walk their dog in their own neighborhood. And the thing that bothers me about the Park Service is they've done a lot of studies, and they say that their decision was based on science, but they haven't actually shared what that science is. And I would like them to be a little more transparent on how they made their decision and why they've chosen to only have one place in Marin County where you can run your dog off leash.
Thank you. Tomas?
You know, I hear a number of people talk about proximity and access and intent. But when you have a federal landlord, the requirement to protect that is for everybody in the United States, not just because you're close to it. So being a military member and somebody who works for the federal government, it's a big machine, and it requires statute and it requires a lot of rules in place. If you want to have flexible, amiable, and accessible government, then you have to have local government that has property to manage. Marin County happens to be a very large landowner, and so maybe we need to shift that access on county lands because the state parks are going to do what they want to do. And I think, Alex, you just need to contact Dianne Feinstein for the oyster farm. She failed you in 2009, buddy.
Thank you. Okay, Brian, you're going to be our next person to start this one off. What's your position on the recent lawsuit against the National Park Service and the future of ranching and agriculture in West Marin?
That's an extremely important question for the 4th District. Ranching is a key aspect of our economy in the 4th District. It represents a fairly substantial employer as far as a lot of the labor that goes on out in West Marin. The question, though, is about whether or not this is an appropriate lawsuit. The background essentially is that a couple of outside environmental organizations decided that they felt that in many cases ranching was being somewhat destructive to our parks. Now, given the fact that these ranches have been there for longer than, in many cases, longer than 150 years, it's critical that we give them an opportunity to continue, and I'm rather appalled by the lawsuit myself.
Thank you. Mary?
Thanks. Were you referring to the lawsuit that the county is countersuing or to protect the ranchers? I'm in favor of that. So I'm glad that the county's stepping up in this instance because it's a big part of our economic engine in West Marin, in Marin. We need food. We need the ranchers. So I'm in favor of that. I find it a shame that we have so many lawsuits going on, just as a general rule, but it is part of life. And so in this case, I'm really glad that Marin County stepped up to protect our ranchers in West Marin.
They're not actually, though, right? Do I have this wrong? Al?
What?
I support the ranchers 1,000%. I'm glad that that the county is using their county attorneys to file a suit against the people that have issued their suit against the ranchers and the Park Service, and I think it's critical. That deal was reached in 1962 by a compromise between the Sierra Club and several other environmental groups and the ranchers to create that Seashore National Park, and we have to continue to honor that. And as far as I'm concerned, that the ranchers and agriculture is the spirit of Marin and what really makes Marin unique. So I very much support that and would continue to support that.
Okay, Alex?
Yeah, I'm against the lawsuit.
And that's all you have to say. Okay.
He's very succinct.
Yeah.
I don't think anyone up here is tied quite as closely as I am to the ranchers that are out there in the park. So this is extremely important to me. So I'm definitely standing 100% behind the ranchers. I understand we need to get the park management plan updated. And that's really what this stems from. The lawsuit is to force the park to get it updated, and they should. And once we do that, we should make sure that we do it in tandem with legislation that shows that the park always intended to have agriculture here. During the 1961 hearings, before they signed the 62 legislation allowing for the park to be created, they did it, as was mentioned, with the Sierra Club and the ranchers working together. But the idea was always that the ranchers would be allowed to be there in perpetuity, and they should be. So I want to get the ranch plan updated, to get the lawsuit to go away, get the 20-year leases that the ranchers need so they can continue to operate their dairies or their cattle ranches. And we have to move forward, but we have to do it with legislation that proves that says very clearly that they are meant to be there in perpetuity.
Thank you. Wendy?
Well, the plaintiffs in this lawsuit have made it very clear that they don't believe that ranching belongs in the park. And if they have also said, Huey Johnson, who is a part of this lawsuit, has been quoted as saying, if they prevail here, then they're going to take it to the rest of the national parks. So we are a test case. And we have to take this lawsuit very seriously. With all due respect to Dennis Rodoni, who wants to get everybody to sit down together and sing Kumbaya, I don't think that's going to happen. I think we're going to have to fight this very vigorously. The ranches are not only our history, they are our local food source, and they are the future for Marin County of really showing how you can be a model of sustainable ranching that can be a model for the country, and that's really what we need to do. We need our own marketing campaign. I agree with Dominic, we need legislation. We need very strongly worded legislation. Unlike what the oyster farm was, it needs to be unambiguous that the ranches get to stay in the park.
Thank you. Tomas?
Well, I'm glad to hear that Dominic and Wendy have adopted my position to make sure that we legislate the federal government. I spoke very adamantly about that. I think that Jared and Diane have failed Marin County numerous times. I do think that there is other local leadership that's failed the ranchers in leadership positions. I know that at least for the last 4 years, the ranchers have been trying to waive EIR and ask the national parks for those leases. And so we need to elect people that are willing to do the hard things. Legislation is hard. You know, making sausage is not something most people want to do on their own, but they love to eat it. And so you need to elect people that are willing to muck through that and get through that hard stuff so that you have those firm rules and you say, look, we as Marin County support the ranchers, which I do. We support diversity, and we support the history of Marin. You told us that we could do it, and now you need to articulate it in the law. And they failed that. So I don't think I'll go further. Thanks.
Thank you. Dennis?
Thank you. So I'm 100% behind the ranchers staying in the park. That was part of the deal. They were here first, and part of the deal when they sold was they would stay here. I'm for the 20-year leases because, quite honestly, no one can do a good business plan on a shorter lease than that. The 5-year lease doesn't work. The 10 years use permit doesn't work. They need to have 20 years. The lawsuit is really about the Park Service not doing its due diligence in many regards. The lawsuit is saying you haven't done the environmental documents necessary to move to the 20-year lease. It's also saying you haven't done the GMP, the General Management Plan. You should do that before you do the Ranch Management Plan. So they're all important issues. And what I asked Huey Johnson to do was to come back and sit down at the table and discuss some of these issues rather than discuss them in front of a judge. Because when it's discussed in front of a judge, many times no one wins, is my opinion sometimes. And so I'd much rather have that discussion locally, and that's why I suggested that.
Thank you. Okay, we'll start with Mary for this one. Homelessness has an impact on all of Marin County. What are your priorities for solving this problem, and be specific?
Okay. I'll be specific and say that I think we should duplicate successful programs that already exist. And one really great program that we have in Marin is Homeward Bound. Homeward Bound has really stepped up to the plate. They have a mixture of social enterprise models and housing, where they take people from the street, train them in a job, provide them with social enterprise opportunities. And they're really, really doing wonderful work. They're taking a full, multi-pronged approach to it. It's not just something like quick, you get a house, stick somebody in it. People need to have work. They need to feel that we're part of society. And so I would just replicate what's working.
Thank you. Al?
Yes, I think the problem of homelessness is really a issue to be handled by organizations outside the county. I think the county needs to be able to have a program for people that are in dire need, but there's a difference between people that are chronically homeless and people that just have a really tough time for a short period of time. I think the real issue of handling homelessness is by nonprofits, and I think that's the best way to move forward. And if the county has to give some money to nonprofits to handle this, I certainly wouldn't have a problem with that.
Thank you. Alex?
I proposed using Marin Commons out at Highway 101 and Lucas Valley Road as a homeless service center. It's owned by the county. It's empty. The sheriff shares the building, so you have a built-in plus right there. Also, the city of Salt Lake City actually put an end to their homelessness, and they found that 60% of their homeless, by contacting the people's families and friends, they were able to send them back home with bus tickets. And then the more difficult part, the mentally ill and such, we need Laura's Law to deal with these folks, to help us get them in services. And then we're left with the families and, it's time to stop.
Well, we do have some good programs here that are working on it, as was mentioned, Homeward Bound, and what happens at the Ritter House do a really nice job of helping the homeless. But I do think we should, as a county, look towards the idea of trying to find a place where we could get the homeless a place to actually live. But we need to do this with stipulations. You can't just give them a handout, give them a place to live, and then expect them to ever do anything productive. They're going to just sit there and enjoy the handout. I think you have to do it with stipulations that try to get them on medication if they do have health issues, and try to find them work, some sort of job, even if it's menial work. But they have to prove that they want to make an effort to have a place to live. And that's where the county, I think, can step in and help. And we should help. We're the people that want it to be helped. But I think it's important that we really give them a hand up and not just a handout.
Wendy?
Yeah, I very much support the REST program and their proposal to create a permanent homeless shelter because, as we read in the paper recently, people are back on the streets again. The churches are now closed down. But it is also important to recognize that there are not just one homogenous group of homeless. There are the people who are down on their luck, and they're the ones who definitely need a hand up. in order to, get back on their feet again. And then you have people who have mental illness, who have substance abuse problems, and they need a very different type of facility. They need the type of facility that can treat their illnesses, and it's really something that has to be more long-term. The trouble with Laura's Law is it's an outpatient situation, and people don't have to keep going. They can, they can be ordered to show up once, and then they can never come back again. And so we need to really look at creating something, and Alex may be right, the Marin Commons might be a good place to look at for an actual mental health facility.
Thank you. Tomas?
Well, as I've said previously, I fully support the REST program in building a permanent facility, but I do believe they need to expand it. My wife Kim helped the expansion of Homeward Bound. She helped their grant raise for social equity so they can do phase 1 and 2. And it is a compassionate program, but they may be at the extent of where they can potentially serve. They've taken as much property as they can, so we may be at our limits there. I'll tell you personally, I've been homeless twice, and my father, when he had his bouts of dementia before passing away a couple of years ago, found himself on the streets. And thanks to St. Mary's Kitchen in Orange County, he had a comfortable place to stay and safe place until we could locate him if he ended up there. So I do believe that the county has somewhat failed on a permanent solution, and I want to work on a permanent solution, not only just the county, and I agree with Al. I think we need to look at how we can have a comprehensive program that both looks at a combined program of the county as well as our nonprofits who are successful, like St. Vincent's and the Ritter House.
Thank you. Dennis?
Certainly, passing Laura's Law is very important. It's just one of the tools that we need to work with homeless. It's not the solution by itself, but it's one of the things we need to have at least available to our service people. We need to look at a county service center. Too often we do great work when the weather's not nice, and then I don't think homelessness goes away when the weather turns nice, but all our facilities in many regards stop serving the people when that happens. We need to understand it's a year-round process. We need to get the cooperation that we've had with the cities and the counties with the REST program and the churches and move that forward. But we need to do work with the homeless 12 months out of the year, not just when the rains are on and the winter's on. And I think that's really important. But the need for a homeless service center has become evident to me in this campaign. Where we locate it is certainly a challenge, but we need to work on that.
Thank you. Brian?
It's important to put homelessness in context. Over the last 30 years, the federal government has essentially discontinued much of their mental health care funding. This created an enormous hole in the budgets and the availability of services. Most of the facilities that were in the United States, and in particular the ones, we had several that were in Marin, were closed. That just was that simple. What that did is it created an enormous increase in homelessness that we've had to this day. Essentially, homelessness is a healthcare issue, in my view, because we are dealing with addiction, we're dealing with mental health issues. So really the only effective way to deal with it is to identify where you have problems. And one of the things that's important to note is that West Marin, and in particular the 4th District, is unusual in that it doesn't have a lot of urban centers other than for the canal and for Corte Madera. And so we need to come up with different ways of addressing the issues.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, we're starting over with Al. Got time for a couple more questions here. What will you do to support the Latino community and refugees from Central America?
Well, I'll first mention I lived in Puerto Rico for 4 years, and I do speak Spanish, but not as well as I used to. I think one of the major issues in the canal is safety. And there was the Voices of the Canal put out a report that I thought was outstanding and went over the issues that are been submitted by the people that live there. And certainly better crosswalks, better street lights, and safety were the key issues there. And I will certainly make sure and work to make sure that those kinds of things are done to help the people in the canal.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't have anything to add to that.
Dominic?
The canal is a difficult district. There's a lot of issues with regards to how much people are making in that area and how well they're living. And I know a common problem now that's taken place over the past year or so is many of the Latinos in that community are actually renting out sleeping bag space and basically giving someone an opportunity to sleep on their floor, providing themselves a little bit of rent. But it's unsanitary and unhealthy because they're not giving them access to the kitchen or to the bathrooms. So that's something we need to step in and try to solve. We also need to work on parking in the area because it is unsafe, as Al mentioned. There's not enough room to park all the vehicles, whether it's the underprivileged Latino community or other people in the area who own a lot of vehicles. They're not providing safe places. I think Pickleweed Park is a great place that we can maybe expand upon. There's actually, I'd like to expand one specific program where they're taking members of the Latino community to Golden Gate Dairy Stables out in Muir Beach and giving these kids the opportunity to learn and ride horses. So I'd like to expand on that program.
Wendy?
Yeah, this is another one of those areas where I actually have direct experience. We have a Latino community in West Marin. We have a growing Latino community in Novato and, of course, the canal. I've been very involved in the canal in both the Health and Human Services outreach programs and also the neighborhood safety group, which was started by Parent Services Project and then was dropped. And I was instrumental in actually getting that up and running again so that we can address some of the many safety issues. We've developed an issues list of what the needs are, and we've met with the city of San Rafael, and we've gotten them to respond to some of those needs, and we're going to continue to do that work to be able to serve the community. And I think it's also really important that what we're doing is we're going into the community and we're asking them what it is they need and responding to their needs rather than trying to figure it out for them in a patronizing way.
Thank you. Tomas?
As I talked about, I'm a first-generation American-Lithuanian, and my family has a unique experience in having to come across. In fact, one of my grandfathers passed away in Germany while waiting for his immigration status so he could come to the United States. And I know that the question is about the Latino community, but it's really about immigrants in general and how they are accepted in the United States, how we enforce our laws about occupancy. That's an issue right now in the canal. And the number of vehicles that are there. I did a walkthrough just a few weeks ago, and the number of people that live per square block is unbelievable. And we have to be able to figure out to work with that community on how we can make more accessible, affordable housing available, but also enforce the rules that are already in place. They're there for a reason, for the safety and security that those families. And when my grandfather talked about the stories of working in the steel mills and families doing the very same thing, this is 5 decades ago, longer than that, probably 6 decades now, we can change it.
Thank you. Dennis?
I think it's important to recognize that the Latino community is a very hardworking community all over Marin. They provide our jobs in for our gardeners, our house builders, our laborers, all sorts of other jobs that we all have done. And they're a very important aspect of our community. I think that it's important that all the important health care services be provided to the Latino community, not just in the canal, but our ranch employees need it too. And in my case, working with Coastal Health Alliance in Point Reyes Station and helping to get a federal funding a few years ago, we were able to provide free health care to a lot of Latino families. And it's the right thing to do. They're providing services to us. We need to respect them as human beings and treat them well. And that's what I propose, and that's what I'll do as supervisor. I'm pleased to have a couple well-known Latinos in the West Marin community, Ismael Gutierrez and Alfonso Ramirez, supporting me, and they're supporting me because they know I'm a stand-up guy and will stand up for them.
Thank you. Brian?
I'd like to agree with and support most everything that I've heard so far. What I think has not been mentioned, though, is that a great deal of the multi-unit facilities that are in the Canal District are in a very severe state of disrepair. This is a health and safety issue, and in particular, it is for the people who live in those buildings. I do not feel that it's necessary that we go in and regulatorily force them out and that kind of thing, but I do think that it's important that we apply a little bit of appropriate pressure to the people that own those buildings to properly maintain them so that those that do live in that community can live in a safe manner. The other thing I really think is important to say is that Latinos are really the future of California. It is said that Latinos represent a majority of California, and it's quite likely that in the next 20 years they will represent a majority of Marin County as well. So they are our future. If we don't support them, we're going to be in a pretty rough state.
Thank you. Mary?
Well, I believe in a very strong pre-K education, so I would support public preschools, and also I'd like to see more access to fresh produce and really good quality markets out in West Marin, maybe a mobile truck sort of thing. But I would also like to, Mayor, there's some really great ideas coming from this panel of leaders, so thank you for that.
Okay, so for our last question, and this kind of plays a little bit on what you guys have been talking about. And we're going to start with Alex, the man of few words. How do you view ABAG and the planned Bay Area 2040 update?
I'd like to get rid of the regional agencies, particularly the MTC. And this Prop AA, I'm all for saving the tidelands, but that money, that pool, that $500 million slush fund they're creating is going to be controlled by ABAG and MTC, and they don't have a very good track record. And I see a lack of local control, and I would like to approach the goals of preserving the shoreline locally rather than regionally.
Thank you. Dominic?
Well, with regards to ABAG and thus MTC and those organizations, I do think they are important to what happens in all of this area, because we're not just Marin County. We do have to act as an entire region. The 9 counties have to work together. So I think it's important that we have someone like ABAG. I just wish that we could hold them a little more accountable to actually get things done the right way, figure out a way to save money. To me, it's become a very large bureaucracy, and that becomes an issue as how they're spending money. And if you look at the regional area plan for the 2040 update, they're really making a lot of assumptions as to exactly how much Marin County is going to grow compared to all the other counties. And so it's very difficult to figure out exactly how much money we're going to get from them for traffic to deal with the additional housing that they're asking us to buy or to create. And so to me, it's a little bit problematic to have MTC and ABAG. Maybe we should just have one, make them work a little bit better together. Maybe MTC should be a committee of ABAG or vice versa.
Thank you. Wendy?
Well, I think it's important to recognize the big picture, because we've been talking about housing, we've been talking about transportation, and these are actually issues that we're dealing with because they are regional problems. And the housing situation and a lot of the traffic stems from economic growth that's going on in San Francisco and the South Bay. We have the Central Valley and the far reaches, the East Bay is being gobbled up by massive development, real massive development. And so the purpose of Plan Bay Area is actually to divert and focus new development into San Francisco, Oakland, and San Jose. The truth is, in Marin County, we're actually only being asked to absorb 1% of the regional growth. But that being said, the way it is being implemented and the way, that we are not really being given a voice and given the opportunity to solve our own problems. And so we're fighting regional agencies instead of working amongst ourselves and talking about what kind of community do we want.
Thank you. Tomas?
So I've lived all over the state of California. I grew up in Orange County. I used to enjoy going with my family through the orange groves and going over to the farmer's market. And you can smell the fresh oranges, and that no longer exists because there are strip malls and homes as far as you can see. Then I moved to the Central Coast, and they did the same thing with San Luis Obispo, and they're starting to continue to expand that valley. I don't know why we have to accept pro-growth. I didn't move here because I want more growth, but it's in a necessary evil because you can see it in Sonoma. And that's part of what Dominic alluded to is the major traffic issues. And we've had decades of failures to see that those are going to be real issues, and then building a system of interconnected trains and transit systems that would move those people, right? So now we're going to open up SMART, but have we talked about moving that train to the east or ferries from the east to the west, and how we're actually going to move those people around? I'm not supportive of I think it's 3,000 homes, but I'll have to stop.
Okay, Dennis.
Regional agencies certainly have a purpose, and they're important to do regional planning. What we need is a strong representative at the county who represents us on those agencies, so that he or she can come back to the county with information from the regional agencies, work with the cities and other agencies in the county to decide how it could be best be divided up, so that we make our own decisions about where the housing goes and not some big regional agency. I'm definitely not in favor of ABAG and MTC combining. I think they'd be way too big and way too unmanageable, and you still have one representative from Marin being there. And I think we need to make sure that we get represented on both those agencies and have a strong representative to bring the will of Marin there, but also to come back to Marin with the types of things that they want us to do and have discussions with the cities to see how we could figure it out, how we could make it work. And if we don't make it work, then they can come down on us if they want. But let us try it first and see if we can deal with it in Marin first.
Thank you. Brian?
Yeah, again, it's important to put this concept in context. The MTC and ABAG have set a whole set of criterion that Marin County is responsible for following. As had been mentioned, there's a requirement that we provide an enormous amount of housing. One of the questions is where? Marin, for the most part, is essentially built out. There aren't a lot of parcels available to put enormous numbers of thousands of new housing units. The other thing that these entities require is a massive reduction in the amount of greenhouse gases that we're producing. The only real way that you're going to do that is enormously increase either the efficiency of our buildings and structures, which California already mandates, or get rid of all the cars, and I really doubt that's going to happen. So the question is, how do you deal with these new policies and these new requirements in an effective and reasonable way that doesn't impact everyone in a huge manner? Obviously, we're not going to give up our cars. Obviously, we're not going to be able to add 10,000 new housing units.
Thank you. Mary?
Okay. Well, I'm not a big fan of top-down mandates. I really do believe in local control. In fact, that's what got me into local politics in the first place. I see the problem with ABAG and MTC as a communications problem. When we don't know what's going on, there's pushback. So I have mostly a communications background. I studied communications in school. I've been a communicator my whole life. I set up a small communications network for our local community, and I can see after a very controversial Safe Routes to School project, we're starting to come together again, and it's a really good feeling to see that happening. But it's communication. Communication is really key to community, and that is what I will bring to the county supervisor position.
Thank you. Al?
This is one of the reasons I'm running. I did an extensive review of the Planned Bay Area in 2013, and I was the guy that found out that ABAG's numbers for Marin were 482% higher than the Department of Finance demographics unit. Moving forward, I've already reviewed the 2017 projections, and they have a range. They used the range this time as one of the recommendations I had put in my public comment from before. The bottom of the range matches up pretty close to general plans. We took a look at it in Novato, and the top part of that range far exceeds what would be expected under the general plan, almost 23% higher. So we've got to get this one right. It impacts every aspect of the quality of life if we have excess overdevelopment.
Thank you. That ends the questions. Now the candidates will make closing statements of 1 minute in reverse alphabetical order. So we're starting with Mary.
Okay. All right, as I started to say in my last comment, what motivates me to to run for Marin County Supervisor is I have seen a lack of respect with regard to the wishes of a community. My only wish is to serve. I don't have any preconceived agendas. I haven't been pushing high-density development or any such thing on a community. I have a need to use my powers for good, and that's what got me into this desire to serve. So the way I see it, there needs to be more motivation for a project. Then there's transportation funding for a traffic light, so let's put a traffic light. And I've seen the rush to grab onto transportation funding as something that is supposed to be a good thing. It's not a good thing. If we don't need something, why do we have to have it there? So thank you for this opportunity, and I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Brian Staley.
I'm running for supervisor because we need strong leadership to assist our communities to adapt to very, very major new regulations that are coming down from the state. These county and state policies will bring unprecedented change to our neighborhoods, and in particular, bring unprecedented change to the 4th District. We need a county supervisor with real experience in policy and planning, who will be a steadfast advocate for residents and the environment. We need to be extremely concerned about the risk of high-density development that is being pushed by a number of organizations, including the one that Wendy belongs to, which is called CALM. I have experience necessary after spending 3 decades as an advocate to improve the health of our communities and addressing development pressures in Marin. And I hope very much that you'll consider my vote, or my vote for me, please.
I'll take your.
Please see my website, brianstaleyforsupervisor.com.
Thank you. Dennis?
I'd like you to visit my website and Facebook site, Radoni for Supervisor 2016. I'm deeply committed to serving our district and county. My experience in local government and as an elected office holder give me the experience necessary to start working day one. I understand how county, state, and federal government function, and I know how to make those entities work for you, the people of the 4th District and the county. If you care about West Marin, and you care about Marin as I do, you'll join me on June 7th and vote for Radoni. I'm all in for Marin. I hope you are too. Thank you.
Thank you. Tomas?
On Friday, I swam from the Golden Gate Bridge to central San Rafael. It was a 13-mile trip that took me over 6 hours to do. I did it for 2 reasons. One, because I wanted to challenge myself and my fitness, but 2 is because I wanted to raise issues that impact us as Marinites, both traffic and economic. People talk about leadership and commitment, and to do what I had done is just an example of what I'm going to do as Marin County Supervisor. I might not have 20 years of experience working on things, but I get things done. When the president points me out to a community, I don't just make sure they have just the bare essentials. I make sure I bring in people who serve that community fully. And that's what I want to do for you as Marin County Supervisor. So you'll get your ballots this week. If you're a voter by mail, please vote for me then. And if you go into the ballot on June 7th, vote for me there. But you'll find me updating all of my thoughts and my articles, both on my website, thomas4marin.com, and on my Facebook page, which has the same moniker, Thomas4Marin. Thanks.
Thank you. Wendy?
Yes, I'm the only candidate who has experience in every part of this district, both east and west. I know all of the supervisors. As a matter of fact, Damon Connolly used to be one of my volunteers, and I have relationships with every elected official in this county. I've demonstrated that I can take a problem, work in partnership with many diverse people, and develop solutions that last. I share my story and talk deeply about the issues with so many people over the district that I've earned the endorsements of many of them. The Marin Democrats, the Young Democrats, unions, over a dozen elected officials, Larry Enos, rancher Marcia Baranaga, affordable housing advocate Betty Paget, Malt co-founder Phyllis Faber, and Cowgo Creamery's own Sue Connolly. Tonight, I hope I've earned your support as well. Go to my website, wendycallens.com, that's Wendy with an I, and Callens with a K, to see all my endorsements. My pledge to you is that I'll listen to every perspective, approach our many problems systemically, and I always will do what's best for our community.
Thank you. Dominic?
Thank you. We need a leader to step into this position, someone who knows how to work with many different kinds of people, types of people, different attitudes, someone who's willing to collaborate and show their leadership skills. And I mentioned earlier, something that I'm very proud of is the collaboration effort that I put forth to work with the environmental community and the ranchers. But my leadership skills through all the many organizations, some are statewide, some are countywide, and some are just within my ag community. But those are very important, and they've been recognized. That's why the North Bay Leadership Council has endorsed me, and the San Rafael Chamber of Commerce as well as many other environmentalists and the majority of the ranching community. For example, Marin County Farm Bureau and California Farm Bureau have stepped up to endorse me in this race. And I might feel that my leadership is what's extremely important to move forward to help everybody in Marin get what we need to get things done and accomplished to fix the main problems we have with regards to traffic and housing and homelessness. So I'd ask you to check out my website, grossiforsupervisor.com, and I'd appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
In the 1970s, before we had so many people, Beryl Buck left a bequest now totaling nearly $500 million to the ordinary people of Marin. On behalf of the people of Marin, it's imperative that we look again at these funds and ask if they are being used as intended on the ordinary needs of Marin residents, helping with tuition, catching up the mortgage payment, or fixing the kids' teeth. Are the administrative salaries and expenses too high? And is Mrs. Buck's will truly being followed?
Thank you. Al?
I'm running because one of the critical issues we have is we need somebody on the Board of Supervisors with strong financial and analytical skills. The problems we have in front of us are to make sure we get our regional housing allocations correct, because that influences every aspect of the quality of life. Our schools, our water, our public safety. But more importantly, we got to make sure we're fiscally sustainable. And not many people know, but Marin County is projecting a budget deficit in 2018-2019 to carry through 2021. And that's after getting $1 billion worth of property taxes, almost $1 billion worth of property taxes last year. So what we need and what's sorely lacking now is a strong financial analytical skills, and my 24 years of executive experience in management and in analytical and financial skills are what are needed. Thank you.
Thank you. That ends the candidate forum. For more information, you may want to go to the League's voteredge.org website, votersedge.org, and enter your street address and zip code, where you'll be able to see your own ballot with links to the candidates, their issues, ballot measures, and information about the voting process itself. We also have important election resource materials on our website at marinlwv.org. The League of Women Voters welcomes both men and women members, and we hope you will join us in our important work. Thank you again for the participants in this debate, and Vita Flores as our timekeeper, and to you, the voters, for joining us. Thank you for being here.